let's make this little light and fun, so that as the setting is also in some ways people are having food. So, but at the same time, there has to be also enough food for thought. So let's keep some space for that. So Swapnil and Manish, thank you for agreeing to be on this. So I think for the longest time, responsible AI has been seen as a cost, as a compliance overhead, and something that was very esoteric in nature, right? So, what are your first impressions when you first heard? I don't know. Maybe you can tell by saying this was the first time when I heard, and this was it that year, and or for that matter, you feel that it is not. You disagree with my statements. That's also fine. But why don't you start with that? Starting with you, Swapnil, and then Manish after that.
So, Praveen, thanks. Responsible AI is a term that we've been hearing at least for 2 or 3 years now, right? While there are many definitions, there is no right definition, right? Every organization has a different definition of responsible AI. But then it, at the end of the day, translates to some common attributes, right? We heard a session on security. Your AI system has to be secure. That's number one. We also know that it has to be transparent, which is auditable. That's one of the attributes. We also know that a responsible AI system, another metric or attribute could be it should be resilient to any further cyber attacks. And I'm going in a particular order because I have some thought that I want to give to the audience here. Transparency, secure. Transparency is basically auditable, right? So you should be able to audit. And then there are, in addition to these 3-4 basic elements, if I may, which is a secure system. Am I audible at the back now? Thank you. So in addition to these basic attributes of transparent, secure, scalable kind of systems, there are some higher elements that you need to look for in AI system. One of them is bias and fairness, right? Then there is, it should be a governed AI system. So those are some 5-6 attributes that are typically part of responsible AI, what I would say.
But not, you agree that it is still esoteric, or you think it's not so esoteric?
If I come from a world where it's a mandate, you have to have responsible AI systems.
Lovely. All right. Manish.
Yeah, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. And apology, I'm between your food and your mouth. So, but yes, the trustworthy and all, we heard around 2-3 years back. I fully agree what Swapnil already mentioned. I would like to go a little more what government is doing, because many startups are here. They may get benefited on that, right? So trustworthy AI is one of the key pillars for India AI mission, what government is driving now. They have separate funding for this, like they have the funding for infra, for foundation model. Similarly, they have separate funding for this. So it is becoming more and more significant. The pillar is driven mainly by IIT Madras, and a lot of work is happening there. I am adding more what Swapnil is saying again. So those are fully covered, but they are trying to come up with Indian benchmarks, particularly what suited for Indian context. That includes starting from language to even for science and other things as well. One thing benchmark, other thing reproducibility. Any result what we get from our Gen AI enabled tools or models or agentic AI, whatever we say, those are reproducible, right? So there's a lot of focus on trustworthy AI. Similarly, other IITs also doing their own projects on that. I can count on those. But it's a key area where everyone is looking into it, and they are doing more and more innovation in that. And they are supporting a startup also with that. So with that,
thank you. So in 2022 is when NASSCOM, we launched these normative guidelines for responsible AI, because until that time there's a lot of fuzziness around what is responsible AI, how do we define. You talked about transparency, bias reduction, explainability, and a bunch of those things. There are core principles that really define that. And for the fact that India still doesn't have regulation for AI, it is important that as industry and as different operators in the industry, we are employing self-regulation, because when you're self-regulated, there will not be a situation where you're causing harm. Maybe inadvertently it might happen, but self-regulation in some ways will at least prevent a vast majority of those incidents. Because when those incidents happen, there is obviously, government will be answerable. They'll come up with a law just like that, which might actually be detrimental from an innovation standpoint, right? So self-regulation is something that we've been advocating for the longest, but it's very good to know that it's much more defined, much more nuanced today. It's a mandate clearly, and definitely in regulated sectors. We've also heard it in the previous panel, especially banking or in pharma life sciences or in larger healthcare. Any citizen-centric or an individual's aspect is sort of attributed to a decision taken by AI will have to be governed. There have to be strong guardrails. So that is clearly understood. Now, there are again, we've also done very recently a state of responsible AI maturity, right? In terms of where everybody stands, we've had interesting results, and I will not mention those. I mean, it's publicly available report, but what we've seen is different organizations have had different levels of maturity. So larger organizations, regulated sectors, clearly guardrails have been enforced in some ways by the regulator, and hence by the virtue of that, it has been the case. There have been cases where if you look at the younger companies, maybe it is not so much. Maybe it is the lack of awareness, lack of understanding, and then again, some of these things require a lot of investment of time and effort, which is also the reason why I said it's a compliance overhead, which bigger companies might be better to manage. But then, what would be your suggestion, or the message, each of you, to the broader industry in terms of how can they each of the operators that are there in the EI sector to embrace what is called as responsible AI by design, right? So in the core process itself. So what would that message be?
So first thing, we discussed interestingly previous session that data is the oil that should be there. But I think we are missing that compute is also required. Nowadays, AI without data, without compute, we can't do. It's not that I'm from Nvidia, hence I'm advocating. But many places, the compute is the issue. Now, what you have compute, accordingly, you plan your all development. And now we are adding the compliance above that. So sometimes the compute time also and compute also becoming the constraint for that. So everyone has to have separate planning, or from beginning the plan has to be there. For compliance or guardrails, we need so much compute extra to meet the SLAs or requirement, whatever we have, time to first token or whatever metrics we define. So the planning stage only we need to have data, and data also like how to evaluate, what to test, and where to do. So the proper planning has to be done. Generally, it gets left over because we have timeline to release the product and we get carried away with that, right? So that is the one thing what I see over the time. Now everyone is realizing that where we need to invest, and we are seeing more better frameworks are coming for that to analyze what to be done and how to take it forward. And it is happening like I can give various example on that. Like in Maharashtra, the government has implemented with Mahavistar, the pharma side, they implemented agentic AI for farmers, and where every farmer gets benefit from various schemes, right? So one more thing what they have done is, any farmer which have plan to apply one form, the few static fields get filled by agents because they are common across them. But there also they need to apply the guardrail because the wrong information should not go there and all. So that thing is going on everywhere now. The guardrails or responsible AI, whatever we say, those are coming into picture. But to plan that, they need to have extra compute in mind, and everything come into picture. So what I say, this is emerging. Everyone is focusing on that, but accordingly, the planning is getting done on that. Yeah.
Thanks, Manish. I'll add on to the example that Manish gave of, there's one of the elements of human in the loop, right? These are terms spoken about. How do you bring in the human in the loop? So that form filling by AI that Manish spoke about, don't just take it to the end. have a human look at it, and that human presses a button to say, yes, I agree, and then move forward. Right. So that's one of the examples of how you can bring in the human in the loop. While Manish gave a very bottom of view of how do you make sure your data, your compute is in place, I'm trying to give a top down view. If all of you are founders, then a responsible AI conversation should be at your level, not down there. So it should come from the top. For larger organizations, it's at the board. The board should say, okay, I am going to bring in AI systems, but this is my framework, and this is my team who will govern the AI system. There are various governance techniques, right? So in today's world, you would just do a questionnaire answering certain. Typically, when you are doing, let's say, a vendor risk assessment, उसमें 5-7 क्वेश्चन डाल दो AI के, हो गया. That's not enough, right? So you need to have a proper governance mechanism, not only when onboarding AI systems, but also during its life cycle, right? Can I give another example, and probably I'll throw open a question. So one of the important elements of a responsible AI is it should be ethical, right? We all agree? Now I'm going to give an example, and I would like responses from the audience once you've done with food, right? There is an AI algorithm to allocate beds in a hospital. One bed remaining, only one. You've got a 78-year-old patient, same disease, versus a 30-year-old patient, same disease. Who does the bed get allocated to? And whatever decision you give, you have to justify that AI is making an ethical decision.
Say that the person doesn't get the bed will die.
Yeah, of course. How would you even design an AI system to decide in this case? One school of thought. Is there a response? Sure.
Speak with the AI. I can help what I can do. So probably get more data landscape, right? You said one data point, age. I'm sure there's more data point. For example, the previous history of the patient, how many other organs are in better shape, or they are even worse situation. So then get more data and then get the analysis.
The decision is
So I'm
important.
not answering it. I'm just
fair point. Fair point. So again, you've answered it quite well. If you have designed an AI system purely based on one element, which is age, the AI is going to look for the best chances of survival, which is a low age, and allocate the bed to that person. Is that ethical enough? So that's where you bring in this school of thought and say, hey, let me also evaluate other data points to give my decision out, and then I justify what is my decision. So that is where you are actually aligning to responsible AI. I'm just trying to give a practical example out here to people to understand that it's not just a tick in the box compliance exercise, but you need to actually bring it in practice.
Yeah. So Swapnil, very good illustration, and it also sort of brings in the understanding that we have about LLMs, which are incentivized to give a response to questions like that, right? As against reasoning being built into how these models respond to a particular query or a question, right? So I think from that point of view, there are these risks in some ways that have also accentuated by the greater autonomy that AI systems are starting to get. Now we're talking about agentic AI, and more autonomy given to agents, of course, with human in the loop. But then, how are you seeing some of these practices in the enterprise setting being employed to be able to, just as this is as simple as you have workers that are doing their job and you have a supervisor looking at things, right? So same case with AI agents also has to be done. But then at an enterprise setting, how is this happening? Any light that you would like to throw on that, Swapnil, and also Manish?
So I'll take a first step. So in an enterprise, and I'm again talking about mid-sized to large enterprises. For startups, everybody does everything. So, right. For large enterprises, what typically happens is at a board or the leadership level, there are clearly roles defined for ensuring a responsible AI. There are clearly roles defined to handle incidents, most important. If there is an incident that comes in, what committee will look at it? There is a very detailed ownership assigned. There are chief AI officers. There are, some people do double up. The CFO may take that role or the CTO may take that role. But there are, like, if I were to talk about EY, we have an AI team, AI governance team separate. So every AI system that I'm trying to bring in, I have to run it past this AI governance team. They give me a clearance, then I'm allowed to bring it inside, right? So that's how enterprises are dealing with it. The smaller ones may have different ways of dealing with it, but at least for the larger ones, they are very clear in assigning goals and assigning ownership of this to certain teams.
Great, thank you, Manish.
Yeah, so I just would like to add, like, we in our organization, we try to believe first implement on ourselves. So recently, skill development is common part of this. Every 6 months we get something. I have seen the journey earlier. It used to be sessions, then question answers, then it came to a screen, personalized screen and all. Recently, it came the interactive case studies. Same like you ask the question, someone come and ask question in my language. I can opt Hindi, even I can opt regional language, and it is going across globe, right? So ask the question and then in their language, and then you need to answer, and it's interactive now. But in there also, if we feel the translation is not correct or something is not correct, we have the channel to escalate and we go back and someone is there to solve. Again, the first agent only try to solve. So 24/7, the availability is there. If not, then as he suggested, there are boards, there are responsible team. They try to, like, as we get system support, now we get agent support also. So we invariably are adopting these methodology. Now there is no question whether it's there or not. We are adopting those, we are using those invariably, and there are ways to address the concern on that. And day by day, it is getting mature. Again, with the Indian context, 1 or 2 minutes, you might have seen through India AI, there are a couple of startups came up. They are doing very good, like Sarvam, like Nani. There are a few more. They are coming up with their voice agent or their own foundation model from scratch and so on. They are doing reasonably well, and day by day they are improving. So again, there is a mechanism to improve and all. So things will get improved day by day. Yeah.
All right. So maybe just a very quick rapid fire also. Now, in terms of going forward, in terms of how systems are built, AI systems are built, if innovation were on one side of the scale and governance is on the other side of scale, where do you see organizations to be tilting towards the most, or is it in between?
Let me answer it, at least my point of view, the way I have seen AI adoption in 3 different continents. If I were to use this scale in the US, it would tilt towards innovation. Very little. They just use the NIST framework. That's all. If I go towards Europe, though, they are very much towards compliance. The EU AI Act is extremely strict there. India is somewhere in between. So we'll have to see. Your thoughts, please.
So one thing more I add what he's saying. In India, generally we implement everything population scale. Initially it takes time, but later on things become so robust that globe adopt it. It's not new. But what I'm seeing more now, language side, we are almost at some level. The beginning of AI for science or Gen AI for science, that is going on. And that's where the real test will be. Like in science, we need answer either yes or no. And that's where the governance will also come into picture. So innovation going on, but governance is equally important there. So I would put it in between.
Super, lovely. It's a great panel, great discussions. Thank you so much. And thank you for being a lovely audience. I hand it back to Viraj.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.